Hi, this is Lynn Hart with Invest St. Louis at Real Broker. Today, let's talk about inspections. This is a point that you get to with any contract, and whether you are a new investor, meaning maybe you've never bought a building before at all, or you're new to St. Louis, there are some things that you should know about inspections and inspections in St. Louis that may be helpful to you going into that process. So, in your contract, you will have an inspection contingency. It's usually about 10 days. Sometimes it can be 14, but usually it's about 10. Right now, we are in a seller's market, and so most of our contracts are still being sold with in an as-is state, and with seller doing no repairs and buyer having inspections for their knowledge only. And that's the first question I get about that is people think that, well, it's as is, there's something wrong with the house. And that's not necessarily true. We just happen to be in a market where sellers don't have to, and therefore choose not to actually elect to do repairs for the buyer. So for us, saying that something is as is they believe it to be in a decent condition, most likely, unless they've stated or disclosed that there are some defects. But basically, they are not expecting the result of your inspection contingency to be that you come back and try to negotiate for the for the seller to take the action to do repairs for you. So that's all that as is really is about. There are a lot of other buyers, sometimes our buyers are coming in and waiving inspections altogether. That's never something that we recommend that a buyer does. But as people become more experienced and knowledgeable about the inventory that we have and the property, the type of construction that we have, it is kind of something that more experienced and seasoned investors may do after seeing the building themselves, or they may have a contractor walk through and then decide not to do inspections. For the typical buyer, though, we recommend that you always have an inspection so you know if something serious is going on with the property before you commit to buying it, or before you continue buying it. You can sometimes, when there are big things that come up, unexpected things that you couldn't see and they hadn't disclosed. Most commonly, it is a sewer. Sometimes it's a roof or tuck pointing. But these are bigger ticket items, somewhere but a few thousand to several $1,000s. And so when those come up, sometimes it is possible to negotiate a change in the sales price. And so those are the type of things that we tend to focus on. So when you're having an inspection, you're going to have a variety of options of different inspections that you can have done, no matter who your inspector is. They will offer a general inspection. They will offer a sewer inspection. That is highly recommended that you get a sewer inspection, because in the city of St. Louis, which is where most of our multifamily property is, a large concentration of it is in the city. These are buildings that are somewhere between 125 years old, plus or minus a decade, right? Or some of them might have been built, maybe they're just 100 years old or 80 years old, but still they're very old. And the number one negotiable item that I see coming up, or things that break a deal, et cetera, are really the sewer is kind of the number one thing. And an average, that I'm seeing is, $3,000 to $5,000 of work that needs to be done. Or becoming more common this year is there are blockages in the sewer and you can't actually see the entire sewer. So there are a variety of ways that we're navigating around that. Usually some negotiation about having the blockage removed, either by the seller or the buyer, and then a re-camera, meaning a re-inspection that's on video to demonstrate that the sewer is in open and serviceable condition. Or if it's not, that the parties have a little bit of time to figure out, are they going to terminate the contract? Are they going to negotiate on price? Is the seller going to consider repairing to keep a certain sales price? There can be a variety of things that happen when we're already under contract and maybe trying to avoid mutually releasing. So, so sewer, coming back to the types of inspections that you can get, there are a ton of them, including termites, mold, and radon. Those three are less common, but they are your elective. You can elect to have any inspection that you want during your inspection contingency period. And so you should read through those on your inspector's website and kind of just decide if they're for you or if they are not for you. So that is your opportunity to fully understand what's going on in the process, in the property. So once you get your inspection, here's what to expect. You're going to have a very detailed report on your general inspection, especially if you had the individual apartments inspected, even if they are occupied. So that's the job of the inspector, is to be very thorough and tell you every possible thing that you might want to consider for maintenance. That is a big problem. That is a suggested like maintenance item, or maybe a recommended repair. So what I mentioned before about there's not really a lot of negotiation to go on. First, when you see a detailed report like that, I would recommend just being prepared. Like what I just said, you're going to see categories of like what's really serious, and then you're going to see a lot of things that are going to feel like there's a million things wrong with the property. But we never see an inspection, a home inspection or a property inspection is not a pass or fail code thing. It is a report that is the full report on the condition of the property. So you're going to see things like if there is a roof issue or a sewer issue or a tuck pointing issue, you're going to see that. But you're also going to see every potential little outlet or a little leak or a wiggly toilet or a handrail. So very minor kind of paper cut items. You're really going to see something that's very thorough. And so I would recommend just going in expecting that, knowing that you're never going to see, I have yet in hundreds of transactions, you're never going to see an inspection that is void of anything that is an opportunity or something that maybe is wrong, maybe not necessarily wrong, but just not perfect with the property. You should expect, even if it was a brand new home, they're going to find stuff. So expect that. And then you should also expect that because you are doing a business transaction, you're not buying a home, or if you are buying a home, and you're not doing it on a special sale contract, then maybe you have a little bit more leeway to negotiate some of those items. But generally speaking, sellers really aren't in tune with becoming the handyman for a buyer. And if you are a investor, you should expect that the other investor who's selling their property is not looking to take on projects, right? They will probably negotiate about the bigger things, and they will probably be annoyed or maybe even just drop the contract if you want to start having them kind of fix every outlet and all the little tiny things that are not about the overall quality of a property, especially if that property is already, it's past occupancy, it's occupied with tenants, and it is a cash generating property. Typically the viewpoint is going to be, in its current condition, it is producing this amount of money. And that is basically what is being purchased, is the income producing business in its current state. Typical things, the most typical thing is sewer. There is something also I've mentioned a couple times, tuck pointing. So tuck pointing, if you're not from Missouri, you're not familiar with this, if you look at the brick wall that's behind me, the mortar, the concrete looking stuff that is in between the bricks, is what holds it together. And specifically in exterior parts of the building, over time, those they call them joints, can kind of erode and be missing or just starting to remove. And as that happens, water intrusion can be a thing, right? And so you don't want your property to be having moisture coming inside. So the repair of that is called tuck pointing, or masonry work. And so because these buildings are so old, some of them have been maintained, some of them may not have. That mortar is, sometimes it's out, and needs just some maintenance. So that, depending on how much of it and how severe the situation is, it's typically not a structural problem. But again, I'm not an inspector. But when it's just kind of eroding, it needs to be maintained and replaced. And so that is a topic that comes up. Doesn't mean the whole building is failing, but it is a kind of a topic of quality. And because it can be a more expensive piece of work, it is something that we end up talking about. Beyond that, our roofs, and maybe HVACs. So with the age of these properties, we'll just talk about both of those at the same time. You should expect to hear a term that I love explaining. They say that this item is at the end of its serviceable life. And what that really means is like it's old. And if it failed, you might have somebody, your service professional might recommend replacing over repairing. And while that sounds really kind of daunting, it's not usually just because something is old. You probably are not going to have any success negotiating a big amount of money because you told somebody that their roof or their heater is old. If those things are still functioning as designed, meaning they're keeping water out of the house or heating or cooling the house, just because they're old, it's really not going to be a negotiation item that you have much success with. How do you get right with that when you're buying a building, right? So you got to go in knowing that you are buying older property. I've seen heaters that work 30 years, 40 years. There's not really an expiration date. And honestly, I have several very old heaters in my properties. And it becomes your choice, right? So I had one go kind of out on us this year, and my property manager came to me and said, it's going to cost like $800 to fix this one, and maybe you want to replace it. Well, replacing it's probably going to be like $4,500, or depending on what parts or how we go about the replacement. So for me, that in that apartment, in that building, even though it was failing, or at the moment, right, it needed a repair. It had been working for, I think this building I've had for, wow, 8 years. So they've been working for 8 years. They were old when I got them. If I have to do one $800 repair, that's my choice, right? I am a ride it till it dies girl. So if it is unable to resuscitate an item, then certainly, you'll go and repair it. Or if it were becoming, that's just my viewpoint. If it were becoming a habitual, like every year I got to spend $1,000 on this thing, yeah, I'd probably start to consider replacing it at some point. But when it's the first time, for me, that's not the case. And for most investors, that's not the case. When they need to get repaired, that's great. So kind of to wrap that up, expect to hear that things are old. Expect to hear the words that an item is at the end of its serviceable life. Translates to old, but does not mean that it is inoperable or not useful. So that won't really be, if something is not working and cannot be revived, that's kind of another story, right? So these are some of the like typical things and common topics that I have come up when it comes to inspections. basically, after you've gotten, we're going to encourage you to get your inspection done at the beginning as early as possible in your inspection contingency period. And then that way you'll get your report as early as possible. And if there's anything big that comes up, we have a little bit of time to maybe get some estimates and know kind of what's that going to cost you to fix. But then by the end of that period of that contingency, we have to submit in writing an inspection notice that basically says, I've done my inspections. Either I'm satisfied with this property and I'm moving forward with the sale, or I'm not satisfied with what I saw and I am going to mutually release and drop the contract. Or more commonly, if there is something wrong, then we're going to have a conversation, right? We're going to say there, hey, buyer is requesting that seller satisfy something, and that something is expressed here. It's on this inspection report. We believe it to be worth this amount of money. And so either they're going to repair it, or if they've already stated that it's an as-is sale and they're not going to do any repairs, then we try to negotiate on sales price or credit to buyer. So that is kind of the inspections in a nutshell. They can go a lot of different ways. We always get a curveball or a surprise. So those are just some of the most common kind of topics that come up for me and my team when we are going through inspections with the client. I would love to hear your questions or your experiences and things you've been through with St. Louis inspections, especially on multifamily property. Please drop me a comment down below, or if you appreciate this information, if you want more, give me kind of some comments on what you'd like to hear. I'd be glad to make a video for you. And I'd love it if you would give me a thumbs up, give me a like, and if you're not already, subscribe to my channel so I can keep giving you more valuable information about multifamily investing in St. Louis, Missouri. Everybody have a great rest of your day whenever you're listening to this. I'm Saturday afternoon. I'm having a construction day. I've been out doing landscaping rock with my partner, and so I'm a little tired, and there's still guys working in my back. I don't know if you could hear them while I was doing my video, but I'm gonna wind down my day and hopefully have a weekend now. So have a great day, and we'll see you guys soon.